Good morning. My name is Brian. I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, I have the pleasure today to introduce today's speaker. Um, we've known each other many decades. I think we met each other in our mid-teens, growing up in Billings, and we were assigned to be friends pretty much because our last name started with the same letter. So we always sat next to each other. And I think it's kind of interesting now that we're in our 60s, we're sitting together again. And I don't know how that happened, whether it was by chance or I believe it was meant to be. I first ran into Jessica after probably 20, 25 years of not seeing her, not knowing really know where each other went. And I walked into the Fourth D when it used to be at where the old dog wash is now up there by the hospital. And I was sitting in a meeting and we were sharing and going around the room. Hi, my name's Brian. Da, da, da. And this woman at the end of the table, the far end, right across from me, said, "Hi, my name's Jessica, and I'm an alcoholic." Because I felt really out of place. I was really scared. I was just starting my 90 and 90. And so it was really nice to see that familiar face. And it was a connection that was made. I think it was a divine thing. Um, so Jessica's been through so much in her life, and I have just some of the things that have, and I'm sure she'll tell you, would drop most people to their knees. Um, so we're really proud of her, and I just learn a lot from her and her strength and her courage to continue to get up and go every single day. She works this program and other 12-step programs, and she's an inspiration to me. So without further ado, here's Jessica.
Hey, well, my name is Jessica and I am an alcoholic. And I want to just say I'm really happy to be here. What I have to say, I hope is God inspired because I'm nervous. So my sobriety date is 11/11, which is Armistice Day. It's the day I quit fighting alcohol in 2009. So I have 16 years of sobriety. But let me take you back to where it all began. I was born to a couple of parents that were actually got married in high school. And back when I was born, it wasn't so strange. But they had my sister, and then 14 months later, they had me. And they were very young, trying to go to school and work and have two young babies. So they fell apart. Pretty soon, my dad just took off and he got remarried right away. I have a half sister who's almost my age. And then my mom, she struggled on. And pretty soon, she stopped picking us up from daycare. We were at the babysitter's and it would go like a day without being picked up. Then pretty soon it was 2 days, then three, on and on, until finally she just wasn't picking us up at all. And she would just mail the checks to my parents. Anyway, she called them and I was 10 months old, and she called them and she said, "I've decided to give the girls up for adoption. I thought you might want them since you've already had them for so long." And so, back then I'm 61. Okay. So back then, my parents just went down to the judge and said, "We've been babysitting these girls. We'd really like to adopt them." And he said, "Oh, that would make, that's good." So went ahead, the adoption went through. And I will just say this. It wasn't a time of where there was research into the psychology of the parents and the mental health. So ended up both my parents were pedophiles. And so my story has a lot of heartache to it. It was a really hard time. And we just, we are not selective in what we get from God. God just gives us what we get. And then it's our job is to deal with it. And so When the first time I ever got drunk, I was 9 years old. My parents that adopted my sister and I, they had four children of their own who were actually old enough to be my grandparents or my parents. So it was like being adopted by grandparents. And my older brother was getting married. So we had the reception at our house. And there were all these cool looking drinks sitting all over. So my sister and I and another friend of ours, we just started emptying the glasses as we went around. I mean, we mixed, oh my God, we mixed everything: beer, hard alcohol, champagne. And then we all, of course, got really sick and vomited. But to me, I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever done. I really did. I thought, oh my God, I have found the answer. And so I didn't really have a chance to drink again until I was in my teenage years. And then I would get invited to the keggers that were on the weekends or on Wednesday, which was hump day, you know. God forbid you get through the week without some beer. Anyway, so I started and I had a group of friends. You know, there were four of us, five of us, and I was always the one that got so drunk I had to be like taken home. You know, I had to be like literally passed out kind of thing, taken home, you know, vomiting, all kind, the whole schmeal. And I really, don't know what I would have done without my friends because they really kind of protected me, even though I was really drinking alcoholically. And then when I was a senior in high school, my father died and my mother went off the deep end. So I moved up to my oldest adopted sister's house to fin. We had been, my sister Rowena and I, the biological sisters, we had been going there every summer since we were about 4 or 5. So we lived our summers with our oldest sister and her husband on a dryland wheat ranch in Flaxville, Montana. Anyway, if you know where that is, I admire you. Yes. Anyway, so I met a boy there and we started dating and we immediately like, you know, there's a joke that says, how do you know when two alcoholics are dating? The moving truck is up at the door of the other one, you know, they and so we right away, you know, became very serious. I had just graduated from high school and I had this is you know those things in your life that give you an ache every time you talk about them. This is my big one for me. I had a full ride scholarship, 4 year scholarship to Concordia College. And I moved, I left Flaxville. And the guy that I was with, I told him, you know, I'm leaving and that's it, you know. So I went down and came back to Billings, started in Eastern Montana College, and found out I got a job, found out the next day I was pregnant. So I didn't want him to know. And of course, everyone told him. So he came to Billings and he said, we are getting married. And I said, no, I don't want to. And he said, well, we are, you know, kind of thing. And I have, I definitely have issues with men in my life and relationships. And so we did end up getting married. And I, you know, delivered my firstborn. It was a son, and he weighed 10 pounds, 6 ounces. He was a fussy baby. I mean, for every 60 minutes, he fussed for about 45 to 50. He was just really hard. And anyway, so my relationship with my husband was awful. He was very violent. I asked him, he came home one day at like 4 in the morning. I said, where you been? And he broke my nose. So we had then you know, I no one in my family had ever breastfed babies. It was all bottle. And so I really wanted to do everything really natural. So I got books and I read up on how to do this and how to do that. And so anyway, when my son was born, uh I started feeling really strange and everything that felt weird, I thought, oh, it's because I'm breastfeeding. oh, it's because, and then my sister said, I think you need to go back to the midwife. And I said, okay. So I went back to the midwife and she sits me up and she says, well, I'd guess you're about 5 months. And I said, 5 months what? And she said, pregnant. And I burst out hysterically because I just knew that babies were really hard, like my firstborn, and they cried a lot and it was very frustrating. And so she had to calm me down. And then my daughter was born and she was 10 pounds 4 ounces. And she was so easy. I could just put her off in the corner and she would play quietly, while I had to chase her brother around because he was a terror. Anyway, and one day I said, I was putting laundry in and my oldest son said, she needs a diaper change. So I said, okay, I'll be right there. I'm throwing laundry in. I go into the bedroom and he had taken off her diaper, covered her with Vaseline, and then powdered her, baby powder, everywhere. I washed her hair about 7 times and it still had gunk in it. Anyways, they were big helps. But so I decided that I needed to get away from their dad. He was beginning to be aggressive with my son, my firstborn, and for me, I could tolerate it. But when I saw it for my children, it just blew my mind, and I said no. And so I filed for a divorce, and of course, it was horrible. Had to get a restraining order and a lot of fun things like that. And then I met, I was working, I got hired at the post office as a letter carrier when I was 19. So I was a letter carrier there. I met my next husband there, and we very quickly became, moving in together kind of thing. And then I had my third son. And so my kids went boy, girl, boy, girl. So that, the older kids voted we'd have one more to make it 3 and 3. I said, no, not going there. Anyhow, he was very, I was putting him through school with my wet postal wages, put him through school to become a teacher. But uh, he was very violent and, and I was just worried about my kids all the time. And so I filed for divorce. But what we did was every day, my son was in kindergarten, and then my daughter was just going into school, preschool, and then I had a toddler. And every day for the school year, I took one outfit and put at a friend's house, and every day for that whole year. And then I filed for my divorce. I said to my husband, I'm going to pick up the kids. So I took the toddler and went to pick up the kids, and we fled. We went up into the mountains to some cabins and waited about 5 or 6 days to kind of I knew it was going to be bad. But when we came back to our house, it was completely bare. He had taken everything, even the baby's crib, all the pictures, the photographs, the portraits. Oh, and I fought for 2 years to get those pictures back. I I said, take everything, take the crib. I don't care, but for God's sake, just let me have the pictures and the kids. And so, of course, it was a contentious divorce for custody and back and forth and back and forth. And so I finally got out of that and then met my next husband in the post office. And you know how the pendulum can swing way over here to way over there? That's what happened. My second husband was really volatile, very angry, very loud. And the next husband I met, he was very quiet. He was very gentle. He studied to be a Baptist minister. And he could quote the Bible so well. And he would say things like, man is meant to be the head of the household and women should subserve. It's like, what? I had a hard time. And then found out I was pregnant with my fourth. And we decided that he would adopt my other two children. My middle son, his dad wouldn't allow it, but my first two kids, their dad was like, good riddance, kind of. And so we struggled along with that. He was he was really strung up on sex. He had a hard time with that. And he told me one day, he came to me and he said, I believe that sex is in the realm of the devil, and I'm not comfortable going there ever. And so it was like a faucet that just turned off. There was no hugging, there was no touching, there was no even just kisses. There was nothing. And so I we had moved to Missoula and I filed for divorce. When I went to Billings, that's where my family all was. My mother and my oldest sister, well, my second oldest sister and her daughter, they all confronted me and they said, "What are you doing to this wonderful man? You're ruining his life. You are taking his everything. You're just an awful person." And whew, that was hard. And I didn't want to explain to them that he had decided that we weren't going to ever be sexual. We bought a king size bed. He had that half, I had this half with my daughter, who was born during that time. And so, another one of those gut ache kind of things, we sat down and figured out that we were paying out in daycare as much as we were making. So I was making. So, my husband decided I would quit and run a daycare in my home. That was a very bad decision. I could have been retired by now and sitting pretty. But, those things are lessons I believe from God. And all during this time while I'm having my children, I'm not drinking because I want everything to be perfect for them. I don't want them to have fetal alcohol syndrome. I didn't want them to be, anything. So I did everything natural, didn't drink. I mean, a six-pack of beer could sit in the fridge for months. Well, so then we broke up and I kind of I just I just don't I have a good friend and she's got a million years in AA and she always tells me, she says, "Your picker is broken." So I found another guy, met him through his mom at work, and we started dating, got real heavy and into it, and then I found out I was pregnant. And I said, "We are done. I am not marrying you. I'm not being with you. I'm not anything with you." And so it was quite a battle. It was a battle. And I'm battling the other kids' fathers also. So it was just a quagmire. My life was very chaotic. And what happened was my youngest son began going on overnight visits with his dad. And he was only about 2. But suddenly I remember standing there looking in the mirror one day, and I swear I could feel this hole open up right here, this hole in my chest. And I needed to fill it with something. I didn't know what, but I quickly found out alcohol was the answer for me. I thought it's not an answer. It's a bad, bad decision. But so I began drinking very heavily, mostly just beer and wine. We lived across the street from the Grizzly Grocery, and I would go over there with like I mean literally pennies, dimes, nickels, and buy alcohol, and I would switch it up. Like one day I would buy wine, the next day I would buy beer because I knew they wouldn't think I was an alcoholic if I did that. Anyway, I became agoraphobic and I stopped leaving my house. And I have 5 children that are running around. My older kids were then about 16, 17. And I just checked out. And, it went from being agoraphobic and not leaving my home to I didn't leave my bedroom. I had beer, I had everything I needed, and I just camped in my bedroom. And so one day, I came out of my bedroom and all of my kids are sitting there, and like my daughter was married, my oldest daughter was married, and uh their partners were there, and she had just had my first grandson. He was brand new. Anyhow, what they did was an intervention. And that intervention was truly God inspired because they planned it so well. They each had a letter that they read to me, and I felt like my world had crashed because I had no idea how much my drinking was hurting them. I thought I was just hurting myself, kind of a slow march to suicide. And they said, they say they told me how much it hurt for me to miss the teachers' conference or worse, show up drunk. It was awful. And I just, like I said, I felt like my world just the bottom fell out of it. So I went, the kids had it planned. So I went right from that intervention. My daughter drove me up to St. Pat's and I was in the psych ward for about 10 days. And then a bed opened for me at MCDC in Butte. So my kids, I remember that day so well. My kids picked me up, all five of them and me, and we drove over to Butte and, waving goodbye, and they're driving away. I just felt like, oh my God, what is happening? What has happened? I'm on a different world. This is a different place. Because by then I was getting sober. And so I got into MCDC, and the first thing that they told me there was watch who you hang out with. And I didn't understand that until I was there for about a week. And MCDC, because it's the Montana State facility, that's where people who are court ordered to get treatment go. And so a lot of them don't have great attitudes. Like I went when it was still in the old place, and way across this field there was a Quick Mart or something, a Quick Way, and that group of women would just stand there all day talking about how they were going to get over there to get some beer. And I thought, oh my God, I do not want to be with them. So, I started the process, and it's a very slow process. If anyone thinks you get sober overnight, they're incorrect. It's a process. And so I got out of treatment. It took me 42 days, and I got out of treatment. And in the time that I was in treatment, the house that we were renting got sold. And so my five kids found us a new house to rent, put down the down payment the first month, everything. And so I came out of treatment to a brand new house, and it was all set up, all set up. My bedroom was just right there. Oh, I have the best kids. I really do. They've been through hell, but so I'll talk a little bit about my kids. My oldest son he's just turned, well, today is the third. Tomorrow he will be 41. And we are estranged. We haven't had any communication for it is now 9 years. And what he said to me when he left was, Mom, I can't forgive you for being an alcoholic and fucking up my childhood. What do you do with that? Yep, I did. So what do you do with that? And so I have learned a lot about turning things over to God and not hanging on to them. I mean, almost everything I turn over has scratch marks from me pulling it back. So, I have learned that when you turn something over to God, my counselor told me this: name it, claim it, and dump it. And that is such a great philosophy. And I'm gonna just tell you a little bit about my kids, how things are now, because we talk about how it was, what happened, and how it is now. My oldest son, the one that we are not together, he is a business manager and he lives in Portland. And then is my daughter. She is an RN, but she went back and got her master's as an RN. So then my middle son, he all of this they did on their own. He is a environmental engineer out in Pennsylvania. So they live everywhere. And then next down is my daughter, my youngest daughter. She is in Vancouver, BC, and she's getting her doctorate. She has 9 months left to go in astrophysics. I didn't even know what that was. And I said, Mercedes, you're going to have to explain that to me. And she pats my arm. She goes, oh, we map the sky. So sure enough, she's working on a project right now. They're mapping black holes with some kind of a wave. I'm sorry, but I can't remember everything she says. It's very high. It's very, very academic. But she says that they're finding out black holes are much, much bigger than we thought. And there's even a theory going around that our universe is in a black hole. And she talks to me about that stuff, and I'm so amazed and I'm so thankful. God has been good. We had hard times, I think everybody has hard times. But and then my youngest son, he's here in Missoula and he struggles. He struggles. He's definitely an alcoholic. And, so there's more on my plate than I ever thought I would have. But I found that you just have to keep going one foot in front of the other. Just take your time, do do the work and leave the results up to God and not have expectations. I am the queen of expectations. When Christmas rolls around, I'm expecting a whole family and presents and gifts and all the and instead it's just me and my youngest son. So have expectations. Those are kind of things that lead to future frustrations. But and I want to talk a little bit about what happened one time. I was this was I think last summer. Um I went with a friend to see a concert, and it was the one that's out that way, whatever. And you go down to the top hat and you ride the bus, shuttle, so you don't have to deal with all the parking and the traffic. And so we said we'll just meet at like 5 and eat at the top hat and then get on the bus. Well, we're eating and we hadn't seen each other for quite a few months, so we were just talking, 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 and the waitress brought our stuff, and I took a sip, and then I took another sip, and I thought, "Oh my God, I could feel that warmth just circling around in my belly." And I said, "That has alcohol in it." And sure enough, the waitress was so sorry. And, the strangest thing happened. You would think, oh, it's just a couple sips, but it threw me back to like day one. I was having the craving, I was having the obsession, I was having all of that. And I thought I was going to go crazy. I did. I thought, oh my God, I have 15 years of sobriety and I'm, you know, uh, anyway, I see a psychiatrist because I do have mental health issues and I address them, which I think everyone should. But he put me on a medication that relieved all of my obsession and all of my craving. And I just was back to myself. It took about 3 weeks, and I was so scared. I thought I was going to drink any moment. I didn't know what to say to people. I didn't know what to do. I stopped going out and doing things, but you know, there the answers are out there. We just have to be vigilant and we have to be persistent. Find what works for you and stick to it. And um another thing that I'd like to kind of talk about is so about 6 months ago, I went to my first ACOA meeting. It's Adult Children of Alcoholics / dysfunctional families. And the thing that's great about that 12-step program is that it kind of deals with all that shit you carry on your back, all the shame, all the guilt, all the fear, all those things. And so, I just am amazed at how the answers always come. we have problems and they seem like insurmountable, but I think if you get on your knees and pray at night by your bed, God will listen. And it's not always ends up the way we thought it would be. It ends up the way it was meant to be, and I think everyone here, we all have the same background. And so it's like a basket being woven tightly. We are the best things we can be for each other. We can be a sponsor. We can be a support. We can just be a mentor, just anything, anything that you can do. And it doesn't have to be called service. You don't have to be a GSR. You don't have to be any of that. You just be there for the people around you, the people who count on you, the people who care about you. And I think that God has a lot in store for all of us. And sometimes it doesn't look like, for me, it didn't look the way I thought it would, especially not after having that sip of alcohol. After 15 years of sobriety, I I just fell apart. I couldn't believe it. And that just solidified in me that I know I can never have that first drink. Never, 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 never the first drink, because I will never stop. And then my life will be over, because I don't think I have another drunk in me, to be honest. And one more issue I just wanted to touch on was, through all of this that's going on in my life, I have some major health problems. In the year 2000, I was diagnosed with MS. And I was 5 years later, I actually went blind. I lost my sight. That was so scary. And completely just black. I woke up in the morning and there was nothing. And so I went immediately to my doctor, and they said, "We don't know what's happening, so we're going to send you to the Virginia Mason Center in Seattle." So I went through the roll call of my kids. My oldest son, he couldn't take me. My oldest daughter, she couldn't take me. My middle son couldn't take me. My fourth child was 17 years old. She took me and my service dog because I was having seizures. I had a service dog, and she got us all the way out to Seattle, to the appointments, to the doctor. And the first doctor I saw, he said, "Oh my God," he said, "you need to see this Dr. Kia." And he said, "I'm going to pull every string I can to get you in to see her tomorrow." So we ran out of money. And so I phoned a friend and said, "Could you please, just wire us $200 so we can get home?" And you know, through all, my 17-year-old daughter was a rock. She was just a rock. And then I saw this other doctor, and they did an MRI, and she said, she flipped the screen around on her monitor and said, "See these lesions? These round ones are MS. These real, weird, odd ones." She said, "You have lupus." So I have lupus and I have MS. I also have been diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis and a host of mental health problems. I will not go into those. But again, I sometimes rail at the medical community because, and I lived a long time saying, "Why me? Why me?" And my little old grandma, she was so great. She's gone now, but she patted me on the arm and she said, "Why not you?" She said, "Should it be your neighbor? Should it be your friend? Who should it be?" And that got me on the road to realizing that, it's a path that we walk. And I can't walk the path for my children. I would love to, but I cannot. Like my youngest son who's dealing with alcohol, he has to do that himself. I cannot enable him. I cannot, you know, c- cater to him because it doesn't work that way. So I love all my kids equally. Some of them are easier to love than others. But I I just want to finish by saying, they're take advantage of the 12-step meetings that are out there. Al-Anon, all these Alateen, if you have kids, all of these programs are there and they're there waiting for someone to walk in and say, this is my first meeting. And I hope you all have that courage and that bravery to do that and move on with your life. Bad things happen, but the best thing you can do is just get up, brush off your knees, and keep walking. One day at a time, one step at a time. Thank you.
Oh, it's amazing. Thank you so much. Um, we do have a little bit more time. What was